Well, just days then before France is set to officially recognize a Palestinian state for the first time, a breakthrough in the investigation into the 1982 attack on a Jewish restaurant in the French capital. In what was described now as a major procedural breakthrough, Palestinian authorities arrested a key suspect in the case Friday. The announcement actually coming from French prosecutors who were citing Interpol. Now, 70-year-old Hisham Harb is suspected of leading the assailants in the gun attack on a restaurant back in August of 1982. 6 people were killed and 22 others injured. Harb had been the subject as well of an international arrest warrant for 10 years. For more on this, then, we'll cross to our Israel correspondent, Noga Tarnopolsky. Hi, Noga. So, can you talk to us more about the timing of this announcement, then?
Yes, absolutely, Aaron. This is really quite a story. Hisham Harb is the nom de guerre of a 70-year-old Palestinian called Mahmoud Khader Abed El-Adra. And he has been basically on the watch list for both France and Israel, to the best of my knowledge, for 43 years. The terror attack took place at a time when there were a number of Palestinian armed militia groups operating in Europe, when there were many threats against Jewish institutions and against Israelis. And the terror attack in which he's accused of being the commander was particularly gruesome. And 6 people were shot in a fusillade of bullets. I think to this day we don't know exactly how many hitmen there were, but it was a very traumatic event for Jews in Europe and I think for France in general. The timing is quite something because this gentleman was arrested by the Palestinian Authority in July, so 2 months ago now. And this really is a moment that reveals one of these dirty little secrets of the region that I cover, because Israeli and Palestinian security cooperation, despite the insults and the threats that are hurled from each side, the security cooperation is actually very important and continues to work. Now, I haven't been able to get a response from the Israeli authorities today. It's the weekend here, so I don't know what the Israeli reaction will be, but I expect that it should be one of satisfaction, despite the fact that the Israeli government and its prime minister regularly refer to the Palestinian Authority, against which they cooperate, as being a group as bad as Hamas. So it's a very interesting juncture. In terms of the announcement, as you asked, French President Macron right now is making serious efforts not only to impact, maybe a day after the war, here in the Middle East, but also to persuade Israelis that he is not, and I'm quoting now, he's not a collaborator with Hamas, as the Israeli foreign minister and the Israeli prime minister has essentially accused him of being by this recognition of a state of Palestine. So here we have an important arrest and an important announcement made 2 months later with, as you say, very significant timing, in which France and the French consulate in Jerusalem are showing Israelis that they are not pro-Palestinian in an anti-Israeli way, but also operating to secure Israelis and also to work against anti-Semitism. So all of that has come together in this very interesting weekend bit of news.
Noga, can you give us more context then about the attack? It, of course, came in the early 80s, which is a time when, there was more than one devastating anti-Semitic attacks in Paris.
There was. Paris was one of these real hotspots at the time, not just for anti-Semitic attacks, but for kind of urban terror. In general, there were also, there was a case of an Argentinian diplomat vanishing from the Argentinian embassy in Paris. That was a bit of Argentinian state-sponsored terror. There was the PLO that was very active in Europe and at that time considered and operating as a terror group decades before recognizing Israel and eventually signing the Oslo Accords. So this really is a flashback to a period of time in which, for example, Jewish school children were really afraid, not just in Paris, I would say in much of Western Europe, in which there were constant attacks. But this particular terror attack in which, in the heart of Paris and just outside a very well-known restaurant owned by Joe Goldenberg, a very famous Parisian restaurateur, this really had a huge impact. And so it harkens back to a period of time in which terror was not a word that brought up images, for example, of Hamas's incursion into Israel and mass murder on the scale of 1,000 people, but in which there was a fear in France and elsewhere that it could hit you at any time, these small urban guerrilla attacks.
Noga Tarnopolsky, our correspondent in Israel, thank you very much.